Welcome to the Destiny Project, a Jewish view of world history. The purpose of this project is to discuss world history, obviously, but the early sessions that we're going to have are preliminary to discussion of history. We have to, lay down certain guidelines and fundamentals. So in the first session, we spoke about where world history takes place. And we identified the Imperial Quadrant, even though it's a big world, and there are many, many different places, and all these places have their history. But world history, that means the events that affect the entire world, take place in the Imperial Quadrant. And the next session, we discussed perspective, that how you look at history really depends on your perspective. Where you're coming from, if you're looking at it globally or microscopically. So that's what we discussed then. And at the end of that session, I said that these sessions, are coming from the perspective of classical Judaism. And today, I would like to explain to you what I mean by classical Judaism. The word classical means something that's time-honored, old, but still fresh and vibrant. Something like a classical garment would be something which is not new, but is still really, beautiful. So when we're talking about Judaism, I would say classical, I mean that form of Judaism which is ancient, but at the same time it's strong and vibrant today. That's classical Judaism. Now, Judaism has different strains, different opinions, and there have been, over the years, there have been different schismatic movements. There have been Karaites, and Reform, and Conservative, and my purpose here is not to debate the legitimacy of those streams. This is a separate discussion. My purpose here is to explain to you how classical Judaism views the world and views world history. So what is classical Judaism? It's old. But Judaism definitely has evolved over the centuries and the millennia. So what makes something ancient? It's really the acceptance of the three fundamental principles which have never changed. Things have been added, there have been takanas of the Chachamim, the sages, have made enactments. There have been different interpretations, different views, but everything comes down to three indisputable tenets that everyone accepts. What are those three? Number one is the existence of God. God exists. Number two is the divine origin of the Torah, that God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, and that it is coming directly from God, and that it is obligatory. That's number two. And number three, that Jewish people are defined by the covenant with God. And I will go into all of these three things separately. Today we will discuss the first one, the existence of God, but I really would like to speak a little bit about what is meant by the covenant. The Jewish people are more diverse than any other people in the world. The Jewish people have people of all races, all colors, people who come from or live in every part of the world, who speak many, many different languages, who have different levels of Jewish religious observance, or maybe no religious observance at all. What is it that binds all these people together? So, all nations, what the origins of all nations are common ethnicity, common land, common language, a common culture. Religion does not necessarily what creates that national identity. In the French textbooks, French history textbooks begin our ancestors, the Gauls. The Gauls were the barbarian people that lived in France at the time of the Roman Empire, and they migrated to France and they established a nation, and they fought with the Romans. The origin of French nationhood does not go back to the French Revolution with all the ideas of the French Revolution. It doesn't go back to the 6th century when the French people accepted on them Christianity. It goes back to the Gauls. That's the origin. That's what makes them one people. Religion, to the French, is like a coat that you put on. You could put on the coat of Christianity, you could put on the coat of Islam, you could put on the coat of pagan religions. These are just coats that go on. They don't relate to the very identity of what it means to be French. However, what does it mean to be Jewish is to be part of the covenant with God. God made a covenant with Jewish people, which will be discussed later at greater length, and whoever is in that covenant is Jewish. That covenant is binding on the people who made that covenant and on future generations. It's for all generations. Well, that's a concept that we will discuss again in different chapters, how covenants work. But that covenant that was made with the Jewish people, that is what binds all Jewish people, as long as they are identifiable as Jewish. Once they become totally assimilated, that they're no longer identifiable as Jewish, then they are not Jewish anymore. But as long as they are identifiable, and I don't know exactly what it would be, but as long as they are identifiable as Jewish, they are part of the covenant, and that makes them Jewish. So these are the three elements. Now, and classical Judaism is the form of Judaism, which is called orthodoxy, but even in classical Judaism, there are many, many, many different variations. There are Hasidim, there are Litvaks, there are Sephardics, there are rationalists, there are Kabbalists, there are Chabad, there are all kinds of different views, and all of them are all acceptable under the umbrella of classical Judaism, because what they all have in common is the belief in God, the belief in the divine origin of the Torah, and the belief that what binds the Jewish people together is the covenant with God. Now, what I'm going to be presenting in these sessions represents one viewpoint as part of the greater spectrum of classical Judaism. So I myself, usually I am a follower of the Rambam. The Rambam's works resonate with me. They are, I define everything according to the way the Rambam, but even the Rambam, maybe there are different interpretations of the Rambam. So I will be presenting what I believe to be the views based on the teachings of the Rambam. Now, the subtitle of this project is A Jewish View of World History. It's not the Jewish view. There's not one authoritative view. It's a Jewish view. And this Jewish view that I'll be presenting is my view based on my understanding of the teachings of the Rambam. The Rambam has different teachings. He has some teachings which are halachic, they're legal, they tell you how to perform different commandments, and then he has philosophical teachings. Some of them are in his great work called the Mishnah Torah, and most of them are in a book called A Guide to the Perplexed, Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide for the Perplexed. I have many times I tried to study it, and it's very, very difficult to get into it. The language, the concept is very, very difficult. But recently, I studied it with Chavrusa for 5 years, and I wrote a synopsis in my own words of the Moreh Nevuchim. It's called The Guide to the Guide, which you can familiarize yourself with this on my website, rabbireinman.com. And this is my understanding of what the Rambam says in the Guide to the Perplexed, and this is what will guide me in what I say to you. Number one is the existence of God. Now, the existence of God is really the most critical question for any intelligent person. When you're living in this world, you're conscious, you're working, you're studying. Like, if is there a God or is there no God? If there is a God, then this world has a purpose, and you have a role in this world, and you're a higher being. You're a creation of God. If there is no God, then basically your life here is meaningless. You're going to live here to the end of your life, and then the light will shut off, and you will cease to exist. And as long as you're living here, you are no better than any other animal. It just happens to be that you are intelligent, and maybe you have a moral sense, maybe you don't have a moral sense. Your life is completely different life. So before a person starts to consider other questions, it seems to me that this is the fundamental question that any thinking person has to consider. Where are we? What is this? Is there a God? Is this the creation of God? Do we have a soul? Will we survive after death? Do we have a purpose? Is there meaning to our life? Or no? Maybe there is no God. Maybe this whole world is, I don't know what. And nothing, we are no better than kangaroos and elephants. I mean, we just happen to be smarter. So this is a very important question. Okay. So now, how do we answer this question? This is very much the topic of many philosophical works, including Jewish works, including the Rambam in the Guide to the Perplexed addresses this question. He has arguments, Chovos HaLevavos and the Shara Yichud will talk about this question, many do. But one of the proofs that has been offered in recent years is something called, well, it's not so new, is intelligent design. The proof of a watch, the watchmaker, that if you find a watch in the desert, that you assume that there is a watchmaker. It didn't happen by itself. So if you look at the complex world, you assume that there's a creator. This world is so complex and everything. You assume that it's a creator. This is, pretty good. It's pretty good proof, but it's really not conclusive because a watch is not alive. So maybe if something was alive, maybe it could evolve into a watch. So it's not such a conclusive proof. What has been offered afterwards is to show something called intelligent design, where different books have been written to show the immense intricacy and complexity of the world. And such complexity, it's reasonable to assume that this didn't happen by itself. At a different time, when we get to the 19th century, then we will discuss Darwinism and all its what the arguments for it and against it. Now is really not the time to get into evolution. But I would like to go in a different direction. And even evolution does not account for the existence of the world. It just accounts for the development of the world, but it doesn't account for the existence. Why is there a world here? What did it evolve from? So evolution does not address that. So I would like to go in a different direction. Where did the world come from? That's the question, right? Here's the world. We look around. There's a universe. Where did it come from? So there are two possible answers. One answer is that it was created. It was created from nothing, called ex nihilo, something from nothing, yesh me'ayin. That means if it was created, if it came into being, something from nothing, there had to be a creator. Because if there was nothing, then how does something come out of nothing? There's no agent that would create this thing to come out of nothing. That's one way. The other way is to say that the world was always there. It wasn't created. It didn't come out of nothing. There was no time before the world when there was nothing. The world was always there. These are the two possibilities. Aristotle claims that the world was always there. The Rambam in the Guide to the Perplexed, discusses. He presents many of Aristotle's views. He likes a lot of them. Some of them he disputes, and he presents his views of what is called an ancient universe. The expression ancient universe means that particular expression means it was always there, and how Aristotle understood it, and what are the arguments for and against it. But you think that the world was always there. It was like there were always animals. Everything was always there. It's a mind-boggling thought. How could it be? How could it be? It was always there. But on the other side, you say that there's a God who created the world, yesh me'ayin, there was nothing, and out of nothing, he created a world. That's also pretty mind-boggling. So, like what? How did that happen? So we have two possibilities. Both of them are very mind-boggling. And I don't know of a third possibility. Either it was always there, or it was not always there. There's no third way. So if it was always there, then, it doesn't mean that there was no God. Aristotle believes in God, but he believes God was always there, along with the world. But it was always there, and God has no choices. I don't want to get into all of Aristotle's. You can read the book if you want to. We can go back to the original. But on the other hand, maybe it was created also. These are the two possibilities. So I would like to address these two possibilities, and I would like to offer a mathematical proof for the existence of God. What is infinity? Is infinity a number? Is it like a really astronomically high number? No, because if infinity would be a number, then we could always say infinity plus 1, and we would have a number that's higher than infinity. So infinity is not a number. When you say 1 divided by 0, how many zeros go into 1? Infinity. What does that mean? Does that mean that 1 is jam-packed full of, 2 has 2 ones in it. Does 1 have like trillions and trillions of zeros? Is it so jam-packed with zeros? No, it's not what it means. It means that you could add 0 to 0 to 0 to 0 ad infinitum forever, and you'll never hit 1. That's what it means, that 1 divided by 0 is infinity. So infinity is a concept. It's not a number, it's a concept. One of what the Rambam, when he quotes in the beginning of the second part of the Guide to the Perplexed, he has 26 principles of Aristotle, and most of them are fine. At the end, that's where he has problems with them. But can you have an infinite series of finite objects? Can you have an infinite number of sheets of paper? You can't, because infinity is a concept. It's not, if you have finite objects, then theoretically you should be able to go ahead and count all of them. And I'll prove it to you, a simple proof. If you could have an infinite number of objects, then you could have an infinite number of cows. And if one of the cows would give birth, then you would have more cows than infinity. So it's not so. Anything which is finite, and something which is material, which is finite, you cannot have an infinite series of finite objects. And that is the first principle that the Rambam quotes from Aristotle. You cannot have something which is infinitely large, a material thing which is infinitely large or infinitely small, because anything which is material is finite. So what can you have? You can have, how many times can I turn this over? How many times can I turn this over? I can keep on doing this forever. But if we're talking about to count units, an infinite series of material finite units, you cannot have that. Now, let's take space, outer space. Outer space is material. It's something which is space. It's empty, there's nothing in it. Empty space is also something material. It's composed of units. You have, let's say, cubic feet. You have cubic feet of space. Every cubic foot of space is a material object. It may have a vacuum in it, but it's material. It has dimensions. So can there be infinite space? No. There cannot be infinite space because space is composed of finite units. And you just said now, maybe space at the end will curl in on itself or different things. But the Gemara says in the Chagiga that you can't ask what's beyond space, because beyond space there's nothing there beyond space. There's no such, space comes to an end. It cannot be infinite. And what is at the end of space? You can't know, you can't ask. This is what the Gemara says. So what about time? Can time be infinite? Time is also composed of units. You have minutes, hours. So can you have an infinite number of hours? I would say no, you can't, because you have it's an infinite series of finite objects, and every moment in time is a finite object. Now, going forward, you could have infinite time, because you could have new time being created constantly. You come to the end of time, more time is created, more time is created. Like you put the zeros in the one, you could add a new zero, so you do that, ad infinitum. Forward, you can add time. So therefore, forward, time may exist forever. But going backward, no new time is being added going backward. So if you say that something always existed, you're saying that it existed in infinite time. And there's no such thing as infinite time unless new time is being created. So the world cannot have existed always. To say it existed always means that the time of the world goes back infinitely, and that cannot be. Now, why can I present this idea, and why did not Aristotle and the Rambam present this idea? It's because I am post-Einsteinian. Einstein discovered that time is a dimension of matter. Time is material. It's a material thing. It's like length or width. It's a dimension of matter. So if time is a dimension of matter, it is material. So you cannot have infinite time because it's infinite material. But before Einstein, time was viewed as some kind of mysterious flow and not of something material composed of finite material units. So therefore, the idea that I'm presenting to you is only understood in the light of Einstein's discoveries. There's a medrash that talks about, so basically what we're saying here is that that the world cannot exist in infinite time. So there has to be, before the world, there has to be some kind of infinite existence that existed before the world, but the world going backward had to come to an end, or at a beginning, which is going backward to an end. So that is called yesh ma'ayin, that the world is something, but the something didn't always exist. It came into existence from non-existence. Non-existence, existence, that is creation, and that requires a creator. So that means that there is a God. Now, there's a medrash that says that Avraham recognized God, and God rewarded him with prophecy. And the Medrash gives a parable, an analogy. There was a man that was walking in the countryside, and he saw a mansion that was brightly lit, and he said, "Look, a brightly lit mansion. That there must be a master of that mansion. Somebody has it. Somebody's doing this." And came to the realization that there must be a God. And once he came to the realization that there was a God, then God said to him, in the parable, the master, calls out from the window, "I am the master of the mansion." So similarly here, when Avraham came to the recognition that there was a God, God revealed himself to him, "Ani balabira, I am the master of the mansion," and he rewarded him with prophecy, and he spoke that. Now, there are two questions here. One, why was he walking? He was walking in the countryside. It was dark, and in the darkness, he saw this brightly lit mansion. Why did he have to be walking the countryside? He's walking in the city. He's walking down a street with many, many brightly lit mansions, and he looks at all these brightly lit mansions and he says, "Hey, these brightly lit mansions must have masters. Why is there this isolated mansion in the middle of nowhere in the dark countryside at night? What is the reason for that?" And secondly, what did he recognize that the others didn't recognize? All the pagan cultures of ancient times, they all had creation stories. Nobody thought that a mansion came into existence on its own. Nobody thought that. Everybody had all kinds of different stories. This god was fighting with that god, and all kinds of stories. And the world came into being from, he was throwing this and threw whatever. I'm not going to tell you all these nonsense stories now. I don't even remember them. But so what did he discover? That if there's a brightly lit mansion, somebody must have built it. Somebody must be the one who's giving it its illumination. What did he discover? So I think what he discovered was the idea of the existence of the world in a vast sea of infinity. That the darkness of the countryside, the obscurity of the countryside, represents non-existence. He understood that the existence of the mansion that he sees had to come from non-existence, because everything around it's all non-existence. So you have non-existence and existence. He understood the idea of infinity and the idea of creation. And if he'd been in the city, he wouldn't have realized that. When he's outside and he's walking in the darkness and he sees there's nothing here, I don't see anything. I just see a vast ocean of non-existence. And all of a sudden, there is a house. It could not have always been there. Therefore, he recognized that there is creation. So this I want to offer. Generally, people in what I call the House of Classical Judaism don't need proofs. They accept it on simple faith, And that is something that also has to be explained, which I will be explaining in the few sessions from now. But they're not looking for philosophical proofs. But for those people that are looking for it or would appreciate having one, I want to offer this proof. So next time we will, okay, so now that we have established, or at least presented, the idea, the first fundamental principle of classical Judaism, that God exists, next time I really would like to discuss why did he make this world? What was his purpose? Thank you very much, and I hope we'll see you again.